Now, the for loop. We have the for loop, which is used to loop through a block of code a specific number of times when you know in advance how many times the script should run. For the for loop, it has some parameters. We have the init counter, that is what initiates the count. We have the test counter, that is what we want to, number of times we want to test the counting or the loop. And we have the increment counter, which is how many times or what kind of increment we want to give the count. So we are heading straight to our text editor now to see how that looks like. Okay, coming to this is the for loop. The for loop, we can have a value initiated to 1, a variable initiated to 1, and we have our for loop. Now this is how we do it. For we have x here. For the value of x, we are initializing the value to 0 at first and say, okay, let the value be 0 for this loop, and we want it to run for as long as x is less than or equal to 10, and we have the increment to increment by 1. So we go ahead and echo this out in our browser and see what that gives us. We have the value is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, starting to 9. Now, why to 10? So why did we have this 0 coming out first? It's because from our code here, we have that the value of x is equals to 0. So it's going to start counting from the initial value for that. So we can come along and play around it. Let's say the value is 2 and we want it to increment by 2. Say plus equals to 2. We want it to increment by 2 for as long as it's less than or equal to 10. We can also come to the browser and see what we're going to get. So we're going to get it in 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. We can loop in reminders and we can loop in so many in multiplications. We want to see, okay, let us say we want to loop in multiples of 2. Let's say it is a multiple star equals to 2, and let's see what that gives us. That gives us 2 times 2 4, 4 times 2 8 in multiples of 2, like that. So we can run any assignment operator or any arithmetic operator in a loop to find out the number of times it's going to work. Okay, welcome back. We're going back to for each loop. In our previous lessons, we talked about the for loop, the while loop, the do while loop, and now we're in the for each loop. So the for each loop loops through a block of code for each element in an array. We should also note that it only works on arrays and it's used to loop through each key value pair in an array. That is to say, for the for each loop, we have that the for each loop loops through an array and executes each value out through the loop. In our previous videos when we talked about arrays, we talked about looping out or echoing individual elements by virtue of calling down the array by saying, maybe if we have a code or a code of colors in an array, we can call them down by the index. But for the for each loop, we're going to be looping through the whole array and echoing out their values individually. Now for the for each loop iteration, the value of the current array element is assigned to a value. We have from array as values, we have let me use my pointer. We have array as a value and each code to be executed. So the value is assigned, the elements of the array is assigned to each value, and the array pointer is moved by 1 until it reaches the last array element. Let's look at what that looks like in the code. Coming back to our text editor here, we have the for each loop. We have an array of colors. Let me space it. Array of colors, which occupies red, green, black, and green. In our previous videos, we talked about just echoing, say, color with an index of maybe 1 or 2, okay, where you just have it this way and it's going to just echo it out the value of green. But for this, we're going to be looping through to find out which of everything to display all the value, and we're going to add a breaking tag to make it break. So let's go ahead and save this and run back to our browser and look. Okay, we see this is what we have here. For the for each loop is looping it out as each individual element, red, green, black, and green. We can also, that is how to for each loop. So taking for an instance, if you have a project you're looping from a database and it's coming out into an array, you can help to loop out and iterate the work effectively. So that's all on the for each loop, and that's all we have on loops. So we have the value here. So we can also give another instance where we have an array with a name and age assigned, and we can also call that out and see for each export every age value, and let's see what that looks like. So if you head straight to our, let's see, let's comment this one out and let's come to another one. Say we're having age and it's an array. We have power, an array of 35. We have Rashid, an array of 25. We have gift, an array of, let's say, 30. And we have this like this. So we can go ahead and say for each, we change this guy to be age. For each age as x. As x to output out a value. So we can go ahead and echo out, say x equals to value. I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. X, and go to our browser and echo it out. We can see that we've echoed out each individual elements and each individual value. So it's telling us that this is this. Okay, so we have it. That's how the for each loop works. More when we start dealing with database more often, we would see how it works in a more interesting way.